2002 GMC Denali 1500 pickup with rear wheel steering. You're gonna do rear brake pads and rotors. What you need to do is jack it up and support it and remove your rear tires. Okay? And then you need to remove your caliper. You have a 12 millimeter header bolt here and a 12 millimeter header bolt down here. And you want to remove those. Get yourself a flat blade screwdriver. Stick it inside here, in between the caliper and your hardware shim. Pry them out just a little bit. Just be careful, because sometimes they have little tits on them, and the tits will get stuck on the pistons and chip them. Okay? Now you can remove caliper. You want to inspect your hose, make sure it's not cracked or got any dampness on it. Then also you want to check out your caliper. Make sure your boots around your pistons aren't torn or wet. Okay, if they're torn or wet, you need to replace the caliper assembly. All right. And then next you need to do is remove your caliper bracket. It's got an 18 millimeter bolt there and an 18 millimeter bolt there. I have to use a wrench. Put my wrench on there and I hit it with my mini sledge to break it loose. And maybe I can get a ratchet 18 in here and ratchet them out most of the way. All right, this is what your caliper bracket bolt looks like. This one came out on the bottom. If you're using a ratchet wrench, make sure you don't use it all the way because you'll get it stuck in there and you won't be able to get your wrench out or your bolt. So only do it a little way so you can turn it with your fingers and then remove it with your fingers. All right, it bounds out right there and then that's it. Okay, not much room for a wrench to sit in there. And here's your caliper bracket. Okay. Next we need to do is remove our rotor. Take our caliper set it aside. Hopefully we can bounce the rotor off. Sometimes they get stuck on the parking brake shoes. What I always do is move them back and forth, right to left. If they're stuck on there, then you have to smack them with your mini sledge. If you're replacing the rotor, then it's okay to hit the surface, but if not, otherwise you have to hit it between the studs and be careful not to hit the stud. But this is the best way I know how to get them off, right to left. Usually I use two hands, but holding the phone. All right, I got the rotor. Here's the rotor. There she beats. And here's your brake shoes. Parking brake shoes, and they're still intact, so that's good. All right, we're ready to go back together. We had it all apart. This axle or hub needs to be clean. Okay, you cannot have rust build up on it. Cannot have any chunks or anything. It has to be a nice, clean, true surface. Okay, if it's all rusty, clean it all up best you can. When you get it all cleaned up, then you want to put a light film of anti-seize around it, just like the way that looks, okay? Because you want to, the anti-seize helps prevent it from rusting in the future, so when you do take it off again, it's going to look like that, all right? So then next, what you want to do is push your pistons in on your caliper. And as you're pushing the pistons in, you don't want your brake hose to be pinched to restrict the return flow of the fluid. If you do not have this style tool to push the pistons back in, then use a C-clamp and an old pad, okay? And then when you tighten up the clamp, it pushes the pistons in. If the pistons don't go in, that means the piston is frozen in the caliper and needs to be replaced, okay? All right, so now we're ready. Got the caliper. I brushed it, brushed the surfaces inside here, and I brushed the pistons with a brush. So the caliper's ready. The hub, I'm gonna put a little bit more anti-seize on it. And the hub's ready for the rotor. What I do is I get the rotor, I'll clean it. I'll wash it with soap and water to remove the shipping oil. You can use soap and water, you can use glass cleaner, you can use brake clean, but do not put brake clean on your brake pads. Alright. And also on your caliper bracket, you need to remove the hardware. Get the hardware off of there. See the hardware got a bunch of rust build up underneath it. Okay. So you need to get that surface nice and clean. Get that rust out of there. Because when you have rust, rust expands. And when it expands, it squeezes those brake pads and keeps them brake pads from moving freely back and forth. So you know, you gotta allow those brake pads to move a little bit back and forth so they don't get stuck on there and stay applied. Okay, and prematurely wear out your brake pads. Okay. And also on the rear, you have a slide pin inside here. Make sure they're not frozen. What you do is you take them out, clean them up, and put a little bit of Seal Glide on them. And then as you put them back in, thread them in. Okay, and you twist them. Do not pack this with Seal Glide because you'll never push the pin in. Okay. The rotor is on. Put light film NSCs on the backside. Reason why you want that cleaned, because you don't want to be having high or low spots on it, cause that rotor to go like this and give you a fake brake pulsation. So that's why you need to have that nice and clean. And also on the brake caliper bracket, I'll clean them up looking like that. Clean up my slides, put some Seal Glide on them. And I'll put some paint on that area I just cleaned. And here's my pin. So now I'll twist that on there and get it on that seal, just like that. Now that the paint is dried, you want to push your clips in there all the way. Make sure they're bottomed out. And also on the inside part here, you push them in all the way. All right. So now we can put our bracket on there and get our bolts started and snug them up. All right. Since you can't get a torque wrench in there, what I do is I put some red Loctite in the bolts a little bit, and I'll thread them all the way in there, and I'll snug them both up, and then I'll tighten them up best I can. And then what I'll do is I'll put my wrench on there like that. And I'll hold on to the wrench a little bit with one arm here, and I'll smack it with my mini sledge. And they're supposed to be torqued to like 90 foot-pounds. Pretty much the same way I got them off. All right, so do them both like that. With Loctite on the threads, and you're all set. Now you're ready to put your pads in there. Do is you grab your brake pads. You got squeakers on them. What you want to do is you want to set them in there. I'll probably do the top first because you want to put get the squeaker in there all the way. Just ease them in there like that. Put the squeaker on the top towards the rotation of the rotor, okay? And just push them in all the way. That's it. Do the same thing with the inner. Find the squeak indicator. Put the top in. Get the bottom in, line it up. Boom. Just like that. And now you're ready for your caliper. Put your caliper on there. Make sure that the line is not twisted. If the line is twisted, it will look like that, and that's not right. So you take this caliper, put it on there, just like so. And you gotta watch out for your slides, because keep you from going on the way. You gotta push them in. You gotta get your retainer caliper up over it. All right, and same for the bottom one. Okay, that's ready for my caliper bolts. There's these two little ones. You can put a little dab of Loctite on them also. Okay, you got them snugged up, and then you want to torque them to 24 foot-pounds, okay? And that's it. See the brake line? Nice and straight. Do the other side the exact same way, and that's it. That's how you do your rear brakes. All right. So now what you need to do is put your tires on and torque your lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds, get it on the ground, go inside the vehicle, start it up, push your brake pedal to the floor a couple times, make sure you got a decent firm pedal. All right, because you don't want to forget about that and put it in drive or reverse and push your pedal to the floor and you have no brakes, okay? So make sure you push your pedal to the floor a couple times before you put it in drive or reverse, all right? So that will complete it. And double check your brake fluid in your reservoir, make sure and top it off as needed, all right? So if I helped you out with this video, that's awesome. Hopefully you can help me out by subscribing, and I appreciate it.